Hats.
Record to the cloud. Hang on.
Okay. Right. Deep breath, everybody. Here we go. We're reading the book, and this is all about people with psychiatric disorders that are significantly better after learning how the mind actually works. Okay. A conversation with Teresa Walding, RN. Hannah Studley. This is a conversation between Hannah and Teresa. Hannah says, "I know that you've had many professional qualifications and you've been post-op anesthesia nurse, but you also have an extensive experience in the mind-body connection and the three principles understanding. What would you like to share with us?" Teresa, yes, thank you. You know, we can go to so many places with this. These principles create everything in life. The principles are life, period. We don't often realize that the mind body connection isn't just thoughts and feelings, it is a whole experience of life manifesting as sensations and emotions in our body. We get good ones and bad ones and all the ones in between. The dysregulation or downregulation based on our negative thinking has a lot more power than people think. And teaching people about how the principles work and explaining this mind body connection is what helps people heal. Everyone knows that we require food, exercise, and stimulation. What keeps the person's physical being healthy is intricately connected to our thinking. Whether we call it psychosomatic, mind body, or neurospiritual, we're all pointing to the same thing. It's an ecosystem, and the three principles run it. Realizing it's all one thing is important. Our bodies have receptors that give us information that comes to us through feeling. We may or may not even be aware of the connection. Hannah, how have you seen this show up with your work in hospitals, for example? Teresa, when I was a nurse in the cardiopulmonary rehab, the stress level, the underlying feeling of how a person presented, often predicted how well the patient would do. I cared for one lady many years ago who had respiratory failure due to her weight and other health issues. She had a heart attack while she was on the ventilator. As I took care of her in the intensive care unit, her husband was talking with the doctor about pulling the plug on the ventilator because they thought she was going to die and didn't want her to suffer. But she could hear them talking and started moving around, reacting to the conversation. She told me later that she said to herself, no one's going to tell me when I'm going to die. After that, she got better. She lived many more years after that in a very healthy state. What I watched her go through is exactly what we're talking about. She suddenly knew what she needed to do to live. As a side note, hearing is one of the last senses to go for people. So even if you're in a coma or your eyes are closed, even if you don't think people are aware that they can hear, even if you don't think people are aware, they can hear you. And so she heard that and she decided she was going to wake up and live. Hannah, that was her innate well being. It was in there all the time. Teresa, right. And when she talked to me about it, she said, I decided I needed to do what I needed to do for my body because without it, I couldn't live. She said, I had to get my mind around these internal shifts because I was unhappy in my life circumstances, a lot of self destructive behaviors to make myself feel better, and that had added up over time. I watched her grow from barely being able to take 10 steps after getting out of the ICU to walking on a treadmill for 45 minutes faster than I can. She told me that I've never loved life this much before. And so there are these different levels of realization, of consciousness. That's the mind body connection. It's built into our nervous system, our ability to think, the ability to know what we need to do in any circumstance. We are never separate from thoughts and feelings, the information that our bodies give us, our environment, it's all one. We live in the world of the formless manifesting into form for us to live life. Hannah. Sid Banks once said, the body is a metaphor. So when you go beyond that, like people who have had near death experiences, they often describe being free of the body, that they are formless, loving energy, that they can't touch the edges of their essence. It's glorious, infinite, unlimited by the body. That energy is connected. We are all connected. I know for me, a lot of my physical pain came from when I felt disconnected to the world. And that's all coming from a thought created experience. Because I was innocently living in torturous thinking, my body was screaming at me to slow down. Teresa, yes, well, we've been interested in studying the body and how it works throughout history, but what Sid found, as he described it, was God, the source energy responsible for this whole way of experiencing life. We have been given interoception, I don't even know what that is, exteroception, and neuroreception, all these receptor sites that we have to navigate, to sense, feel, and interact in our world. We can't cut ourselves off at the neck and not consider the rest of us. We can embrace and embody this whole experience of living. And while I would love to never have pain, and I would like relief from pain every time I have it, it's full of wisdom. You and I both have had chronic pain, but when my pain left my body after 5 years, I could run anywhere I wanted. It was so light. I was just floating. Hannah, me too. I felt lighter and stronger than I had in decades. I also think it's important to remember that it's not a race and healing can take time. Some of us need more time, but I have also seen people whose pain levels take longer to drop, but their state of mind improves and they have less on it. So it actually becomes less painful. Teresa, yes, when you have pain that doesn't go away or life circumstances that just continuously seem to snowball and you don't know what to do with any of it, it can seem overwhelming. Ask someone who gets a terminal diagnosis if all that stuff matters. None of it does. Because guess what? At a terminal diagnosis, there are no consequences for anything because the ultimate end is already here. What are you going to do with that? How are you going to show up now? And when you notice that you're suffering and you know about the principles, all of a sudden you don't have as much emphasis on it or attachment to it. That's what quiets our minds and heals people. You are able to calm that complex thinking and let this innate health and natural resilience shine through, and the body follows. That's how intricately connected it is. You can be healthy even at the end of life. Hana, in this section, I have a list of chronic mind body recovery stories. As a medical professional, how do you understand how we get into a chronic physical state? Teresa, take the skin picking. There are sensory nerves on our skin, and when we stimulate them, we get a feeling, and that feeling can be good or bad. Now, if it didn't feel good on some level or serve a purpose for that person, they wouldn't do it. It's similar to people who cut themselves. They are releasing some kind of tension or some kind of stress. They are trying to relieve their pain. It's the same reason people drink or vent their emotions. We're looking for relief. Some people find relief in the sensation of pain. I think fibromyalgia is an even better example because, as you know, it has a component of prolonged stress. Not paying attention to the physical signals of your body when the stress starts means the body needs to work harder to get our attention. If we don't know what to look for or are so busy we don't notice, it can feel like an inconvenience to take care of ourselves. And the body starts screaming at us, like what you said. Those interoceptors can read our mind and it says, something's going on. Let me alert the body. Because if we get pain, it's going to slow us down. It's a built in system. Anna. Yes, and I think it's important to stress that it's not a punishment or some malicious, subconscious, devious way to make us suffer. It's actually wisdom, the wisdom of our bodies trying to get our attention. Teresa, exactly, because that's its job. All the chemical reactions, all the stuff we don't really know how it works is perfectly doing its job. Our nervous system is designed to keep us safe. It's an alert system, but we often don't know how to notice these alerts early enough to intercede to prevent it from becoming chronic, which is when most of us find the principles as we search for help. And we're
It,
going, oh my goodness, look what I'm doing with my stressful thinking. It was the missing link that I did not recognize in my experience. Knowledge of the principles helps us understand the mind body connection. And however your thinking works in your body, it can innocently manifest as fibromyalgia or migraines or irritable bowel syndrome, IBS. Hannah, I did a course with a mind body medical doctor, Dr. Howard Schubiner, a few years ago, and I asked him, why is it that some people get migraines and some people get plantar fasciitis or IBS and other people get asthma? He said, we don't know. When clients come to me asking about specific physical issues, with all the love in my heart, I say, it doesn't actually matter because focusing on the symptoms is often a distraction. I feel like that's the best service I can give to them to keep pointing them back to that insight. And it's amazing how, when their thinking slows down, the nervous system doesn't have to keep screaming in all those different ways. Different symptoms, one cause. Teresa, exactly. Let me give you another example. I had a friend whose plantar fasciitis was, in her words, quote, killing her, unquote. She said, I can't walk on my foot. I've had to take 3 days off of work. The pain is all I think about. I am so miserable. Then we started talking about what was going on in her life, and I said, well, it sounds to me like you're stuck. Well, guess what? Very soon we weren't talking about plantar fasciitis anymore. We were now talking about her marriage. And suddenly she goes, oh my gosh, I know what I need to do. I'm getting a divorce. I asked her a few weeks later, how does your foot feel? She said, Teresa, literally, the heel pain went away the minute I filed my divorce papers. She said, I feel great. We can just be ourselves now. We are still good friends, and there's no expectations. Hannah, yes, sometimes it can be so obvious, and other times it isn't so clear. I've only realized in the last couple of years just how anxious I was in my 20s and 30s. I see now that it was keeping my nervous system revved up, and my body was screaming at me with IBS, agonizing back pain, asthma, allergies, psoriasis, on and on over the years, trying to get my attention. Thank God I found this understanding, as it's all gone away now. You just reminded me of how a lot of people I speak to, as they wake up in the morning, they'll scan their body to see how bad it is hurting today, which innocently sets off the fight or flight response before they've even gotten out of bed. They start thinking about, oh my gosh, how am I going to get through the day? How am I going to pick up the grandkids? How am I going to do this presentation? Then they are then innocently in survival mode, feeding the pain, and it keeps going. I didn't know that I was doing that, that all the fixing and focusing on it was making it worse for decades. I love what you were saying earlier about how the nerves are there to do a job, and our innocent misunderstanding of how it all works is making it malfunction in a way. I think that's what a lot of chronic pain is. Teresa, yes, it's an alert system. Hannah, I'd like to go back to what you were saying about it moving around the body because I think that's often a common experience. Like someone might get tennis elbow, and then it's frozen shoulder, then it's irritable bowel syndrome, and then it's migraines. I had this my whole life, one thing after another, but I never connected it to stress. I always thought they were separate issues. People often end up going to people often end up going to lots of different specialists. I had a client here recently and she had terrible nerve pain in her tooth. I told her I had the same thing years ago. I had three dentists look and there was nothing quote wrong. She said, "Yeah, they took my tooth out." I said, "Did it get rid of the pain?" No, because the problem wasn't in her tooth or mine. It was anxiety. Many people have MRIs, and the doctor will say there's nothing wrong, or the MRI is clear, but they don't believe the doctor and start going for all kinds of weird and wonderful treatments. It's exhausting. Then fatigue starts showing up, and brain fog, and all those kinds of things. It's just fascinating how the body works like that. And if you don't understand it, it can be frightening. It can really feel like we're falling apart. Teresa, that's absolutely true. When I was in nursing school, we learned about the fascia of the body, the little tiny fibers like microscopic rubber bands that connect muscle, skin, and attach it to our bones with ligaments and tendons. When you look at a slice of muscle under a microscope, you can see that in between each fiber of muscle is a piece of fascia. That's what holds a body together like glue. So when you have pain over here, this fascia can actually refer pain somewhere else. We talk a lot about referred pain in nursing and the medical world. Sometimes the pain is not where the problem is, but because the nerve is innervated or connected to where the problem is, you feel the pain somewhere else. But nothing is wrong with the spot where you feel the pain. For example, gallbladder pain can manifest as back pain. Heart attacks, for example, where does the pain go? Up the jaw and down the left arm. So it's not the arm that's the problem, it's the heart. You know, someone who's deeply grieving can actually die of a broken heart. That's an actual diagnosis because the pain of the grief is so much that the heart hurts without this person. And what does it do? Maybe it's not beating very well, or we're having some funny beats, so let's give him some medicine to make it beat better. Let's fix up the rhythm, but it doesn't solve the problem. If you have a broken heart, that broken heart will override other treatment. Having a conversation with them and learning about them, you can actually help them see the connection. I have had this conversation many times. It helps them understand their experience. They may still need the medication, but it seems to work better. This is another true example. My friend works at the VA, the Veterans Administration, and they had this man who kept coming back for chest pain. The medicines were not working, and finally she asked him, "What's been going on with you for the last 6 months?" He said, "Well, my wife died," and he just broke right down. "I miss her so much." They talked, she listened, and with her knowledge of the mind body connection, which she explained to him, he got better without medication because someone showed him what the real problem was. Did it stop him from missing her? No. I had another patient one time that was on 37 medicines. She knew what every one of them was for, and many were for side effects of previous medicines. She was so sick. When we began to get to the root causes of her conditions, we were able to bring her down to 2 medications. She understood better what she needed to do to heal. Education. Education and knowledge heals lives. Hannah, wow. Yes. When I did some case studies at the beginning of my work with clients with chronic pain, I did some follow-up, and the most common feedback I got was that they were all touched, that I talked to them like a human being and not like a knee pain in cubicle 3 or the 9 a.m. frozen shoulder. They were really struck by the fact that I knew that they were well, that they had innate well-being, just a list of symptoms, not just a list of symptoms. They felt listened to. Teresa, letting people know that you care about them as a human being is so important. Even if you can't see your health as a nurse, I can see your health, and it's always there. Hannah, wow, that's beautiful. Thank you.
Wow.
Ow.
Awesome.
I'm gonna stop the recording now.